Good morning. Welcome to Thursday Chapel. If you've been here before, you know that Thursday is a day where we practice being still, where we become still in God's presence and practice listening to what God might have to say to us and what God might have to show us. So thank you for being here. My name is Irene Kraegel. I'm the director at the Center for Counseling and Wellness. And this is one of my favorite things to do in my job, is to get quiet with students and to practice what we call mindfulness. I lead a mindfulness group, and it's not too late to sign up for that. Just a little plug, if you'd like to join us at the Counseling Center for our mindfulness group, if you're a student. It meets Tuesdays at 4 o'clock, and next week is the last chance to sign up for this round. So I invite you to do that. You may have picked up a paper on your way in that will guide us a bit and create a framework for debriefing after your practice today, but that also has some information about the group on it. So we practice mindfulness here in God's presence. We bring an awareness to what is happening in our bodies and our minds, but also in the presence of God. And the last couple weeks, we have practiced a body scan, tuning into our sensations, our physical sensations. We practiced a sitting practice where we noticed our breathing, our thoughts, and our feelings. Today we'll try something a little new, which is called a blessing practice or a loving kindness practice. And so in the course of our time together, we'll be bringing to mind a blessing, both towards ourselves, but also towards different people in our lives, people we care about, people who are maybe strangers to us, people who are difficult for us. These are all the types of blessings that God asks us to extend into the world. God has great compassion and mercy for us, and so our practice today will be an opportunity to receive that compassion from God and to extend that to others as well. If you've been here the last couple weeks, you've heard me say there's no right or wrong way to do this. So I will guide us through our loving kindness practice, but please don't follow my instructions at any point. If there's a different way that you would like to sit that's more comfortable for you, if there's a different place that you would like to rest your attention, I invite you to break the rules and adapt this to whatever is the most helpful for you as you sit in God's presence. One other note is that we will be using a bell today, and you might be familiar with this type of bell already. We really use it just because it has a beautiful sound. So I will be using the sound of this bell to draw us into the practice as we settle into God's presence, and then I will be also ringing the bell at the end as we close our practice together. So I invite you where you are to go ahead and get comfortable, settle into a stable and maybe slightly dignified position in your chair. If you would like to sit up a little bit straight, you might imagine your head being drawn up towards the sky just a little bit. No need to be rigid or arched with your back, but just letting your spine become straight, feet flat on the floor if that's comfortable for you. You might rest your hands on your thighs or in your lap. And if you choose, you can close your eyes. It's also an option to close your eyes halfway, leave them halfway open as you gaze softly at the floor beneath you. And I will begin our practice of stillness here in God's presence by ringing the bell. And so allowing your body to settle here into the chair, noticing points of contact between your body and the chair, maybe between your feet and the floor, noticing the weight of your body, noticing sensations of contact with air, with clothing, and noticing that all of this is provided for you by God right here in this moment. This chair to sit on, this space to be in, these people around you who have gathered with you to be still in God's presence. And so you might bring your awareness as we begin to the sensations of your breath coming into your body going out of your body. There's nothing you need to do to make the breath happen. No experience you have to create in order to breathe. This is simply breath that's given to you by God right now. And so seeing if you can tune into these direct sensations of this God-given breath coming into your lungs and then going out of your lungs. If you'd like to take a couple deep breaths as you get settled here, you're invited to do that. Perhaps noticing the rise and fall of your shoulders with each breath. And then when you're ready, just allowing your breath to return to its natural rhythm and rate. No need to control it or count it or do anything with it. Just resting here in God's presence. And in the stillness here of this moment, receiving these words that are given to us in the book of Colossians, chapter 3, verse 12. As God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Taking a moment here to clothe yourself with God's compassion. And now creating an image of yourself in your mind as you sit here in this compassion from God. So this could be an image of yourself as you are now, or perhaps you as a small child. As this image comes up, doing your best to cultivate a soft and loving heart towards yourself, extending grace and love to yourself, and perhaps imagining yourself here in God's light, just letting yourself rest in the warmth of God's light here for a moment. And then if you choose, you can extend a blessing to yourself by saying each of these phrases after me, silently in your mind. May I know God's love. May I know God's joy. May I know God's rest. May I know God's peace. Seeing if it's possible to open up your heart to experience this blessing, not simply in your thoughts as a cognitive exercise, but seeing if you can cultivate a knowing of God's presence in your body, in your breath. May I know God's love. May I know God's joy. May I know God's rest. May I know God's peace. May I know God's love. May I know God's joy. May I know God's rest. May I know God's peace. And now bringing to your mind somebody that you care about, somebody that you love. This could be a close friend, a family member, a mentor. It could even be somebody you don't know that inspires you or uplifts you. Somebody that brings you feelings of love and tenderness and care. As this person comes to mind, imagining them in your mind's eye, opening your heart to them, extending love and grace. And perhaps imagining them in God's light, just letting them rest here in the warmth of God's light for a moment. And imagining this person you care about in your mind as you extend a blessing to them silently in your mind. May you know God's love. May you know God's joy. May you know God's rest. May you know God's peace. Noticing any feelings of warmth that might arise in your heart, both emotionally and physically, as you extend this blessing to the person that you care about. May you know God's love. May you know God's joy. May you know God's rest. May you know God's peace. And bringing to mind now a stranger, somebody that you recognize but maybe you don't know their name. Could be somebody you pass on the path or you see working on campus. Someone that you have neutral feelings about. And imagine this person in your mind's eye. Recognize that although you do not know them, they also have a life that is full of hopes and fears as you have. They too wish to be happy as you do. Opening your heart to this person, extending love and grace towards them, and perhaps imagining them sitting in God's light, resting in the warmth of God's love for a moment. And imagining this person that you don't know in your mind as you say, may you know God's love. May you know God's joy. May you know God's rest. May you know God's peace. May you know God's love. May you know God's joy. May you know God's rest. May you know God's peace. Bringing to mind now somebody that is difficult for you. So this could be someone that causes some kind of tension or anger or other difficult emotion when you interact with them. No need to pick up the 100-pound weight here, so you don't have to think of the most difficult person in your life. But someone that's caused some type of pain or someone you don't get along with very well. And imagining this person in your mind's eye, doing your best to hold them gently in your heart with feelings of benevolence and gentleness. And if there are feelings of anger or tension that arise for you, you might try observing these thoughts and feelings with some curiosity and kindness towards yourself in this moment, seeing if you can let those feelings free to God's care, letting go of attachment to them. And imagining this difficult person in God's light, letting them rest in the warmth of God's light for a moment. And imagining this person in your mind as you say, may you know God's love. May you know God's joy. May you know God's rest. May you know God's peace. And if this is difficult, you might return to extending a blessing to yourself, recognizing that it is you who is hurting in this moment and in need of compassion, that God is near to the brokenhearted. May I know God's love. May I know God's joy. May I know God's rest. May I know God's peace. And then when you're ready, extending blessing again to this difficult person who is also in need of compassion. May you know God's love. May you know God's joy. May you know God's rest. May you know God's peace. May you know God's love. May you know God's joy. May you know God's rest. May you know God's peace. And then finally, extending God's blessing to all of creation, to all beings everywhere, recognizing that all living things are held by God and sustained by his love. You might bring to mind this whole beautiful blue-green earth, full of plants and animals and people, the whole world in the light of God. Allowing all beings to rest here in the warmth of God's light. Imagining this whole beautiful world as you say, may you know God's love. May you know God's joy. May you know God's rest. May you know God's peace. May you know God's love. May you know God's joy. May you know God's rest. May you know God's peace. And so resting now in God's blessing, resting here in this stillness that we've cultivated together, opening yourself to God's compassion for you and for others in this place, in this moment. And so allowing this blessing to rest in your heart, seeing if it's possible to bring some of this sense of compassion and gentleness with you into the rest of your day. I'll ring the bell and you can listen from the beginning of the ring until it trails off into space and can no longer be heard. And you can bring some movement back into your body now, maybe wiggling fingers and toes, stretching arms and legs, whatever feels good for you. And you may have noticed a variety of thoughts and feelings that came up for you during that practice, and those will be some good clues as to how you can take care of yourself over the coming day. I encourage you to use the debriefing sheets that were near the front to take a moment to just jot down what came up for you during that Christian mindfulness practice, whether it was a spiritual sense, a physical sensation, a thought, a feeling, some kind of urge. And let me know if you have any questions. It's been a delight spending these 3 weeks with you, and we will continue to be still together in different ways on Thursdays moving forward. So I hope to see you back here next week. Go in peace.